Thank you to Policy Genius for supporting PBS. How can you see a cube that isn't really there? Why does this window spin one way and then the other? How can something shrink before your eyes and then grow again? And why do you see a chair where there is none? Optical illusions like these are more than just tricks. They can actually help us unlock the secrets of how we make sense of the world around us, and even how we construct reality itself. In this video, we're gonna explore a whole bunch of really mind-bending optical illusions and dig deep into how they work to try and answer one important question. How do you know that what you see is real? Hey smart people, Joe here. So every waking minute of every day, your brain is doing something truly incredible. It's taking a gazillion tiny electrical impulses from your eyes and creating a fully functional three-dimensional reality. It's pretty impressive when you put it like that. The scientific term for this is spatial perception, and it's one of the most fundamental ways that you make sense of the world around you. I mean, think about it. If you want to be able to move around your environment, you got to be able to detect obstacles, to know how they're arranged, what kind of space exists between them. I mean, I don't care if you want to do something as complex as brain surgery or as simple as picking that book up off the table. Your brain needs a really accurate picture of how big things are and how far away they are. And that's harder than it sounds. Space has three dimensions. If you look at it sort of mathematically, then those three dimensions are basically identical. But when it comes to how your eye sees the world, those three dimensions are not created equal. Because your brain has to make sense of a 3D world using a 2D picture. You can put objects in order in the up-down dimension by how those images land on your retina, bottom to top. Same with left to right. Those images hit the back of your eye in different spots, so it's easy to put them in order in the side to side dimension. But how do you figure out that other dimension, how far away an object is? Well, even though all the light coming into your eye hits the back as a flat image, hidden in that two-dimensional picture are clues. There's many different kinds of clues. And we use these bits of information, these clues, totally unconsciously, to build our picture of reality. These circles are the same size, but how far away is each circle? And which one's farther away now? Looking from here, you can clearly see which one's closer and that one circle is actually bigger than the other one. I can just slide this one closer or farther away. The illusion worked. You couldn't figure out size and distance because you didn't have enough clues. When you look through here, the only information that your eye has is which circle is bigger. And well, size matters. When things are closer, they literally take up more area on the back of your eye than when they're far away. So with no other clues present, your brain thinks the bigger thing is close and the little thing is far, even though they're the same distance away. And when they look the same size, they can look the same distance away, even when they're not. Of course, if you have more clues, you can get a better picture of reality. Like, I'm in front of all that stuff back there, but how do you know that? One clue is maybe it's slightly out of focus, but you also can't see all of these things. I cover up that stuff, so I'm clearly in front and it's in back. It's the reason that this turtle is in front of this one, who's in front of this one, who's in front of this one. It's turtles all the way back. If you can't see all of something, then it's farther away than the thing that you can see all of. At least that's true most of the time. You just need more clues. Magic. And another one of those clues explains why the drawings that you did in kindergarten look so awful. The first thing you do is draw the ground, right? Then maybe you put a tree over here, and there's a house, and here's a person. But how do you tell what's closer and what's farther away when they're all standing flat on this line? You can't. If you can't see the ground and the horizon, you can't tell how far away things are. But if you can, and when you add in those other clues, how big things are, what's on top of what, then you can start to build a three-dimensional reality. Take a picture like this. It's full of clues. These trees closer to the horizon, they're higher up in the picture, so they're farther away. And these trees down here are overlapping these other trees, so they're closer. But the most important clue in this image is linear perspective. Even though a path like this one is made of two parallel lines the same distance apart, they appear to meet at a point on the horizon called the vanishing point. Sensing these parallel lines, seeing things converge on a vanishing point is what creates the sensation of perspective in your brain. And it's a really powerful clue. Noticing this linear perspective clue in the world, that's one of the big things people in Europe figured out around the beginning of the 15th century. And it's why art went from looking like this to looking like this. These are just a few of the clues that you use every day to build your reality. And you don't even have to consciously think about them, you just do it. That's incredible. Give yourself a pat on the back. And that brings us to one of the all-time great mind-breaking illusions ever constructed, the Ames window. The window appears to be turning normally until this point, when it stops and spins the other way. Most people see this window kind of oscillating back and forth infinitely, except that it's not. It's just rotating. Round and round and round. Whee! Very weird though. This is an incredibly powerful illusion. And it gets even stranger. Watch what happens when I put something through the middle here. At first, everything seems pretty normal until the object appears to rotate backwards. What in the cerebral cortex is going on here? Well, for a long time, people thought this Ames window illusion works because we live in physical spaces built out of rectangles and right angles, what's been known as the carpentered world. Basically, we're used to seeing rectangular things that don't actually look like rectangles. When researchers showed the Ames window illusion to people who lived in rural areas without many rectangles around, well, they expected that people who don't live in carpentered worlds, well, they wouldn't see the illusion as strongly. But when viewed with one eye, as the illusion typically is, both urban and rural subjects saw the illusion basically the same. So there must be something else going on here. And I think the explanation is likely much simpler. This trapezoid is built in such a way that no matter how it rotates, the length of the longer edge is always bigger on the back of your eye than the length of the shorter edge. And if there's no other clues available in your visual field, your brain does what it always does. It makes the best guess with what it has to work with. What is bigger is closer, and lines converging towards a vanishing point are farther away. Conclusion: the window always appears to spin away from you. These are visual cues that exist regardless of whether the environment is built or natural. Human brains seem to be wired to construct reality this way because that is what the world has always shown us. Can that also explain this? This is a room that can make things grow and shrink right before your eyes. I know what you're thinking. This is a dark and evil magic, but it's not. It's just a trick room. It's called an Ames room. The ceiling, the walls, the floor, the windows, everything, they're all skewed so that when you view it from one particular spot, your brain ends up building a false reality. In this case, your brain is getting the clues that we talked about. It's just that those clues are lying. The really cool thing about these illusions is that even when you know how they work, when you know that you're getting tricked, when you know that what you see defies the very laws of nature, well, that's still what you see. Having more knowledge doesn't really affect the illusion much. I think that's kind of the most wonderful thing about the Ames demonstrations. They're what researchers sometimes describe as cognitively impenetrable. It doesn't matter what you think about politics or sports or what you had for breakfast. Your perception is going to work a certain way. Now, I mentioned that this illusion only works from this one viewing angle, this very specific spot. This kind of distorted view, where you only see the normal thing from a specific vantage point, is what's called an anamorphism. Artists have been using anamorphic tricks for centuries. One of the most famous examples is Hans Holbein's The Ambassadors. When you view it from a very low angle, a slash of gray becomes a skull. Or the very flat ceiling of this church in Rome, which was painted in 1690 to look like a dome. You're probably more likely to see this illusion marking a bike lane or something though. But the Ames room is one of the most striking examples of anamorphosis, making a rectangular reality out of a very non-rectangular room. Okay, now it may seem like you're looking at a chair here, but it's not a chair. It's just a jumble of strings pointing this way and that. But if you look here, this one is a chair. And so is this one. This is an illusion called the Ames chair. It's not as well known as the Ames window or the Ames room, but it's actually my favorite. Partly because this was a real pain in the butt to build, so I have to tell myself that it was worth all the trouble. But it's also my favorite because it shows you how sensitive that your brain is to certain patterns, and how, if you see a really special pattern, you almost can't help but add meaning to it. And the clue that your brain is picking out in this one is connectivity. From that special point of view, these edges, they come together to form nice, neat corners, and your brain is sort of doing this probability calculation. If this really were a bunch of separate bits of string, then of all of the ways that they could be arranged, there's basically no probability that they'd randomly find their way into the arrangement of a chair, right? So it's like your brain is saying, based on this very limited information that I have, the most likely situation here is that all of these lines are connected. Because if they're not, I'm in this very weird chance situation. Of course, it turns out right now you are in a very weird chance situation where I have specifically arranged the strings to make a chair shape. But that would basically never happen in the real world. Because in your normal experience, those connections would never occur unless they have meaning. Conclusion? That's a chair. Now, interestingly, this idea of connectivity might explain one of the oldest illusions on Earth. I'm sure we've all experienced that incredible feeling that you get when you go out and look up at the night sky and you see shapes emerge from the stars. Constellations. The different cultures have connected the sky dots slightly differently over the past few thousand years, but one that always seems to be seen the same is this, the rough shape of a human wearing a belt. We call that one Orion. Incidentally, that reminds me of a joke. You ever look up at the night sky and see Orion's belt? Big waste of space, if you ask me. Because it's like a belt waste. Whatever. That joke only has 3 stars. Anyway, this is probably gonna ruin your horoscope, but the shapes that we see in the stars, they happen for the same reason we see a chair and a bunch of random strings. Because we happen to be viewing it from a very specific point of view. If you were somewhere else in space, the stars of Orion would look like this. They're all different distances from Earth, and well, they're really nothing special to our friends on, I don't know, Alpha Centauri or whatever. It's only because you happen to be right here that this group of stars means anything at all. Most of the illusions in this video were invented by a guy named Adelbert Ames. You don't meet a lot of Adelberts, do you? Well, around 1910, Ames was studying to be a lawyer, and he decided that he wanted to be an artist instead, which is always a fun conversation to have with mom and dad. Well, he started studying how the eye senses the world with the goal of making more realistic feeling art. But Dell ended up abandoning art and spending the rest of his life designing a series of elaborate demonstrations to try and unlock the secrets of how we see the world. And those demonstrations have captivated scientists and the public ever since. Just before Ames died, the plans for these demonstrations were published in a book that is incredibly hard to find. But thankfully, I was able to find a copy thanks to something amazing called a library, which is like the internet if it was a building that you had to go to. One of the strange things about most of Ames' illusions is most of them only work when viewed with one eye from a very specific spot, which is why so many of them work so well in video, because the camera is essentially like viewing the world with one eye. And as powerful as these illusions are, if you were to view most of them with two eyes, or if you were able to just move around a little bit, they wouldn't work. So even though they show us a ton about how our visual system can kind of break down, they also kind of show us how awesome our visual system really is when it does get all the information it needs from both of your eyes. Unfortunately, you still only get to use one eye for the rest of the video, the camera. But there's one last set of visual cues that I have to tell you about for size and for how far away things are. And they only work because you have binocular vision. Okay, try this. Hold up two pencils or pens, one in front of the other. When you focus on the rear object, you see a double image of the front object, one on each side. Now, close one eye at a time, and you'll see that your right eye sees the left image and your left eye sees the right image. Now focus on the closer one. Suddenly the back one is doubled. Now your right eye sees the right image and your left eye sees the left image. So what's going on? When we look at a fixed point, your eyes move individually so that point hits the center of each eye. The closer an object is to you, the more extreme the effect. But your brain is sort of always unconsciously comparing how different the picture from each of your eyes is. And it uses that as a clue for how far away things are. When an object is really close to your eyes, you can actually sense the feeling of your eyes crossing inward to focus on it. You can even feel how the muscles that focus your eye's lens are flexing and pulling to bring something into focus and get another clue that way. There's clues like texture. You can see more detail on closer things than you can far ones. And clues like parallax, which is how objects at different distances move differently relative to you. You actually have a ton of clues at your disposal to judge what you see. So we build our picture of reality from these bits and pieces, from clues, not the full picture. The software of your brain, if you want to think of it that way, it looks for certain clues that it thinks are important. And your reality is always built from that incomplete information. Most of the time, that incomplete information is still good enough to build an accurate model of reality. But the Ames illusions show us that sometimes incomplete information isn't enough. There's this idea that in some ways, especially today, if different people are given the same information, then we can end up with a very different picture of what is real and true. But these illusions show us the opposite, really. That when it comes to seeing, at least, evolution has made it so that very different people perceive the world in the same way. And that's kind of nice to hear these days. Stay curious. Thank you to Policy Genius for supporting PBS. Policy Genius is an insurance marketplace, not an insurance company. Policy Genius combines that marketplace experience with online tools, an educational library on all sorts of insurance topics, and guidance from humans to get you covered. For example, if you're searching for life insurance, Policy Genius offers info and quotes from most insurance companies all at once. You can get personalized quotes, apply online, and compare your quotes all in one place. Additionally, Policy Genius offers advice from people who work in the industry. Their team handles the paperwork, scheduling, and negotiating with the insurance company on your behalf as part of the service. For more information, click the link in the description below. I want to say a big thank you to Brian from Real Engineering for 3D printing this nifty little thing. There's a link to his channel down in the description. And as always, a huge thank you to everyone who supports the show on Patreon. Patreon, you know how it works. It's how you can follow the channel and support videos like this without any AI, any algorithms in the way. Just you and me hanging out, talking science. If you want to learn how you can support the channel, there's a link down in the description. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next video.
First years. I'll fight you, Voldemort. I'm grown up now.